Welcome back to the Roundtable. This is Roundtable Talk, the newest show of the Reality Realm Network. My name is Bruce Heller,
And my name's Brett Parnell.
and there is only two of us this week. Normally, this show is a three-person show. Our friend and co-host Kevin Oliver is feeling a little under the weather this week. I believe he has the bubonic plague, Black Death, something along those lines. I don't remember, but it's something like that. And so
Uh,
he
you
is out this week.
you said that Kevin wasn't here. I wanted to give some speech about how I'm Kevin, except for I don't know who his least favorite players are in the traitors that I can pretend to become my favorites. The
There we
way
go.
he
Oh,
did
like
for
he
me
did.
on Tribal Council chat.
Well, here's the thing, and he might have the bubonic plague right now, but the traders on our, whichever one of us is the trader on our podcast, may or may not have given him a chalice that was poisoned with a lace of bubonic plague. So the game is in full swing, even amongst your hosts here. As whichever one of us is a traitor, ignore my cloak.
I was just gonna say if it wasn't kind of obvious that one of us is wearing Taylor Swift merchandise and the other one is literally dressed like Boston Rob right now.
No, I'll never go full Rob. You'll never see me wearing a Red Sox hat because I'm salty that they
uh,
have beaten the Cardinals in two
uh,
World Series during my lifetime. The second of which I'm convinced we would have won if we had just intentionally walked David Ortiz every time he came to the plate. I
yep.
think he alone beat us in that series in
My
2013.
my favorite baseball player of all time.
But I digress. Kevin is not here. The traitor on our podcast has poisoned him, and he now has the Black Death. So he may
So
or
let's
may
get
not be
into the
back. We'll
show.
see. Maybe he has a shield. We don't know. Maybe the traitor tried to kill him, and he's gone for this week, but he'll be back next week. We'll see.
Maybe he's met up with Ekin-Su.
Oh gosh, yeah. Ekin-Su also didn't have a shield though, so if
No.
that's the case, he won't be back, and it's just us forever. But yeah, diving in, we have episode 4 of The Traitors season 3. What are your kind of thoughts on this episode?
Oh, this was such a good episode. Um, I mean, the opening with the murder that's in front of everybody is whenever they do that is always entertaining to watch. The way all the players handled it, them being told it's time to move out, but Tom's still trying to get information. That was fun.
Is that what
Um,
he was doing? It looked like he was just standing there not saying or doing anything for a second.
that's the way I interpreted it. That I thought that like they waited for a while for a bit, and at that point they didn't make up their mind yet. But I think the players thought that the decision was already made.
Yeah.
Um, this week's daily mission was really fun to see. Just so many different storylines going on. And then the end of the daily mission, when we're going to get into it, but one player decides to attack another player, and that person is the player that you don't want to call out. Because we've seen it happen with, let's say, Denny Boatwright recently. We've seen it happen with Alicia and Sheehan. We've seen it happen with what the guy on Redemption Island that looked like Fabio.
Oh, yeah.
You know who I'm
Matt
Matt.
Elrod.
Yeah, exactly. And boom, it's like history was repeating itself at the end of that challenge and it blew up.
Yeah,
So
for
this was
sure.
fun.
And we will get to quite the incredible roundtable. We'll get to the murder, but we start out with everyone is finding the bookcase room and
Yep.
the bookcase open all of a sudden, which is just funny after my House of Villains binge, where like every their ceremonies for nominations and banishment and Hit List are going through this bookcase. Everyone's like, "Whoa, that opens!"
Yeah. Not like
You
none
guys
of
are
them have ever
surprised?
been
It's
in
the
there
castle.
before.
And then Dylan says he knows something changed, but can't figure out what it is. And like, this dude is awesome content so far.
He is.
He's I I mentioned last week, someone online said he's the Peter of this season, but he's a
Yep.
more fun, likable Peter.
Oh, absolutely. No, I've Dylan's been the player that I didn't know what we were going to get from him, and he's just been amazing to the point that I already envision we're in season 3. Maybe like Survivor around season 8, they do an all-star season. He's probably the player right now that you're looking from this cast at bringing back.
Yeah, and to be fair, I probably wouldn't have disliked Peter as much as I did last season either if I wasn't such a Parvati fan.
Yeah.
Or if it would have been anyone else on that cast, he would have been going after that. Well, not Sandra or CT either,
Uh,
but like yeah, Dylan's been awesome so far. And then like as we're all like freaking out finding
Before
out,
we go on,
yeah.
I sent you that quick video, but you brought up Sandra, so I have to bring it into this week. Sandra saying that she would have brought Rob into the game if that was last season at the handshake twist. That would have been amazing to watch.
Did she say who she would have taken out? I don't remember.
She hinted, she didn't say a name. She said it would have been one of the housewives.
Okay. But see, I guarantee you, if anyone would have shaken his hand, that person would have re-entered when Rob did.
Oh, I'm sure.
So, but yeah. So Alan calls everyone outside, and there's these three empty coffins. And you remember we saw this last year with the challenge, with the poison chalice. Afterwards, everyone goes out and they're hiking through the woods. That one was part of their mission. This one's not. But
Yep.
they get out there in front. There's three coffins. Alan announced what we found last week that the traitors made a short list for murder, and they came up with three names. And Jeremy and Nikki and Sierra are told to get in the coffins. And then Alan closes the lids and tells everyone to walk away. And as they're walking away, Tom Sandoval is just kind of awkwardly standing there on the stairs, staring at the closed coffins. I don't know what information he would have been trying to get. Like, wasn't anything else there. I think he just spaced out. And Alan has to say, "Go, Tom, go! Don't dawdle behind," or something along those lines.
Yeah, that was funny.
Not linger, is what he said. Which I don't know what Tom kind of feels like he's on a different island and planet so far this season. He's just kind of out of it so far.
Yeah. I think going back to what my sister said about him and the reputation he has in this Bravo community, I think Tom knows that he has to play a quiet game at least for a few weeks. And that's probably why we're getting that from him.
I missed this in the first three episodes last week, but apparently there was a scene where he was like sweating through his shirt a ton because I've seen that picture circulating Twitter and
Mm.
Instagram a lot over the past week.
Yeah, I missed that too.
But and so that's it. We don't see the traitors come back yet. We're at the breakfast the next morning. Robin is throwing out Nikki's name immediately and says that Nikki is at the top of her list. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah.
Robin and her friends?
Robin's saying that I found it from a point influence it could very well influence the game because they are convinced that there was one of the traitors was in the box because they could have put themselves in the coffin. Now, of course, they don't know what instructions the traitors were given from Alan, but it's just a thought of they would try to do that to get attention off of them. This shows you how smart it is in her behalf of how well Carolyn is playing the game. That Carolyn was like, absolutely not. Am I going into that coffin? Um, it doesn't make sense that anybody would want to take Carolyn out at this point. So putting her in there would show the rest of the cast that maybe Carolyn's a traitor. Where now we're 4 episodes in out of 10. So I mean, yes, we get 3 episodes for the first week, so we're not halfway done the season. But their time in the castle is about half finished, maybe just a little under that. And nobody has said the sentence, I think Carolyn is a traitor yet. She is playing the best game so far.
Yeah. And so, and yeah, the wanting to put Carolyn in just shows that Bob the drag queen is not a good trader. He's not playing a good game as a trader.
Yeah,
And we will get into him a little bit later.
yeah, absolutely.
And so everyone's as Robin is throwing out Nikki's name, we see Gabby in that same conversation mention that she's suspicious of Danielle. And she's right, but her friends and allies don't believe her, which is kind of interesting to me. And then everyone's in at breakfast, and as people are coming in, Gabby and Robin bring up the bookcase at breakfast and ask who was in the bookcase. And Gabby mentions, "Oh, I thought I saw Danielle coming out of it." And I forget what exactly Danielle says, but something along the lines of, "I was in there with Dylan. We saw it open and went in there and came back out." But I'm like, you asked, the bookcase was open. A traitor must have been in there. Who was in there? Nobody's going to give you an answer that helps you there.
Yeah,
What's the point
until
of this
Bob
question?
does.
What is the point of this book? Like, a traitor must have been in the bookcase. Were any of you in there? That there's no point in asking that question. No one's going to give you an answer that helps you.
Exactly.
But
But yeah, it has to. I don't know how, and I know I said this in last week's show too, coming into it. I don't know how much this bookcase thing was really made accessible to the faithfuls and how much of it production would have hit off in order to make sure that it doesn't blow up the entire show. It just seems too risky for me
yeah,
because if they were just to let the faithfuls walk anywhere they want at any time and go into that, like stand outside the bookcase and watch 4 people walk out of it, hey, there goes your whole show.
yeah. And so as this is going on, we get a confessional from Danielle that says, "Gabby may be onto us, but then again, it's Gabby. She's a little Bambi. All she's done in this house is be cute." And I don't think you're giving her enough credit
Yeah,
because before you walked in, she said she was onto you. Now, lucky for Danielle, none of Gabby's friends believed her, but
I know we said this with um Dan last season, you and I'd love to have Kevin here next time and to ask him this question, but I know Kevin in our cast review really hyped up the fact that Danielle was on the Traitors. And as someone who doesn't watch Big Brother, I'm kind of getting the same sense as Dan that Danielle just seems to be a little overhyped and underperforming.
I think the thing is just because someone's good at another game doesn't mean they're good at this.
True.
Dan can do what he did and still be the best Big Brother player ever.
Oh yeah, no question.
Like Parvati, in both of our opinion, is the best Survivor player ever. She wasn't a great trader. She got sussed out by Peter of all people.
Which is hard
So,
to say because Dan just sank Poverty's game like a brick.
which he did because he fell for Peter's trap. But I feel like people were starting to suspect Parvati before
Yeah,
Peter did
I
the
don't.
whole
She
trap
wouldn't have
thing.
won.
No, and like people, but yeah, I don't really know what to do with Danielle other than to say she's overacting everything. And so people file in for breakfast. Everyone that's still alive comes in, and we realize that, like Kevin in the Zoom call, Jeremy has been murdered from the castle. And I have a couple notes on this. First off, I'm sad, but I was right because last
Yeah.
week I said he's coming at Danielle hard and saying her name a lot. And either Kevin or you or both said, yeah, but if they kill him now, they can't do that. It'll make it look obvious that it's her.
And
And
it
then
might make it
dead.
look obvious. We'll see soon.
Yeah, I was afraid of him getting killed though, and would told I don't remember by who, but I remember being told they couldn't kill him yet because that was.
Probably both of us.
So I just have to plant my I'm right flag because I don't get to do that
Yes,
very often.
you're right. I'll admit it because I know I thought they couldn't kill him. I'm not convinced to say that this was well done. I think Danielle could easily be the next traitor to be found.
Yeah, and Carol, my other note is Carolyn seems really not happy and like struggling with this. And my note at the time was, unfortunately, as much as I hate it, I get it.
Yeah,
Like he was saying Danielle's name, and at that point, the traitors are a team. They have to stick together.
yeah. But
Now,
I also could see this being a situation where, with Carolyn being such an emotional person, that the production crew could have just asked her leading questions surrounding what's it like to lose somebody from Survivor,
yeah,
which she obviously is very attached to the Survivor community in the last few years.
yeah. And we've seen this at least once last week, and we see it in the episode this week at the banishment. Carolyn just seems to be very up and down. Like
Yeah,
every murder and every banishment feels like it's getting her like really emotional or upset.
fair.
And like Jeremy, I get, and we'll get into the banishment. I kind of get it with this one, but a couple of these, it seemed like she's like taking it on a personal level,
Yeah.
which I just don't.
It'll be interesting whenever the season ends, no matter how um how it ends, to see Carolyn talk about that experience herself post game
Yeah, if she
and to
was,
how much of it was legitimate and how much of it was her making sure that nobody suspected it was her that was doing the killing.
if she wasn't playing such a good game, I would say something along the lines of maybe she's not built for this specific game,
Right.
but she's playing probably the best game of the traders right now
Yeah.
because one of them was terrible. Well, at this point in the episode, is terrible.
Yeah.
One of them just clings to the other one and buddies up to him.
Yeah.
And Rob hasn't been. We haven't seen enough of him as a traitor because he came in late before this
Yeah.
episode. And this episode, I could argue, was either a great move by him or a bad move by him.
Yeah.
So, like Carolyn, if Carolyn wasn't playing such a good game, I would be thinking something along the lines of she's not built for this specific game
Right.
because of how upset and personal everything seems to be affecting her.
Yeah.
But
I'm
she's playing a
I'm
good
gonna
game,
take
so
the
I can't
opposite
say it.
perspective, and we'll see what Carolyn has to say at the end. But I'm honestly gonna say that I think right now a lot of just is just an act because she doesn't want the faithfuls to know that it's her.
Which, if that's the case, I will be
And
really
I think it
impressed.
really helps her to try to keep that mindset going when she's in confessional because you don't want to accidentally let your character slip in the middle of the game.
Yeah. And if that's the case and this is all an act, I won't be surprised, but I will be very impressed by it because it
That's,
seems very real and very genuine.
yeah.
So, yeah. And so after breakfast, we see Wes mentioning Nikki's name to Ivar and to Danielle and says that she's a performer for a living. And people like that, actors, actresses, pro wrestlers, they would want to put themselves in coffin and be part of the performance.
When
And
we were watching here, I said something funny.
what'd you say?
When I was watching the show, Wes says that Nikki being in WWE is a performer for a living, and I'm like, Wes, what do you call the challenge? Wes
Yeah,
is a performer for a living too.
which they're both physically taxing, but I will give the challenge credit for not being scripted.
Yeah,
And I will say, people harp on and I don't watch WWE or pro wrestling, but everyone's like, "Oh, it's fake, it's scripted." I'm like, so is every TV show or movie.
yeah.
I don't know why that's such a shtick with people. But our next scene we see is Dylan saying he wants to go after Bob the drag queen, but doesn't have the numbers because everyone seems to love Bob the drag queen so far.
Yeah.
And so, do you have anything else before we get to the mission?
No. What a fun mission though this was.
My first note from the mission is actually before it started, and in all caps I wrote, "There's a doggy,"
Yes.
because they showed a little dog next to Alan when they were walking in, and I love dogs. So I wrote, "There's a doggy" in all caps with two exclamation points.
I wonder if that was just there or if it's Alan's dog.
Either way, I love it. I want to see the dog in like a
Every
dog
episode.
clothes version of a cloak or something like that, or some maybe not even the cloak, just like fancy dog clothes to go along with the fancy clothes everyone's wearing.
Yeah.
But so the mission itself is that we're carrying statue pieces up a hill and reconstructing them on their bodies on a base.
This
Problem
was
is
fun.
there's a head for 18 of them with names on them and only 10 bodies. And
Yeah.
each player that gets their head on a body will be shielded from tonight's murder.
This was fun to watch. The only question I had more for production though was whose bright idea was it to literally recreate Easter Island, which is a set of statues in Chile, as opposed to ones that are more Scottish in origin in the middle of the Highlands?
I don't care. I love it. Like the East, as mysterious as it is that nobody knows where they came from, the Easter Island heads are really cool looking. So
They
I'm
are.
okay with this. I actually forgot I had a second dog related note. I wrote, confirmed, the doggy is a faithful. That's because one of my dogs is a traitor. And my mom is still watching through season 2. So if she catches up and hears this, she knows exactly which one of our dogs I'm calling is a traitor. One of my dogs doesn't do anything, and the other we lovingly refer to as the monster half the time. So
That's funny.
Alan's dog or random Scottish dog has to be a faithful because Casey's the traitor. And so back to the actual mission, aside from my weird obsession with the random dog on the screen that we know nothing about. Tom goes up and like immediately first or second trip I think puts his head with his name on it on one of the statues.
Yeah. They
That's
had
a
to get
pretty
the body.
bold move.
They had to get the bodies up there for as well, but he's brought his head instantaneously, knowing that once there's a body there, he just needs to run up the hill. Doop.
Yeah, that's a bold move when it's a team event working together and you just
Absolutely. I think, kind of like I was saying earlier in the episode, and that my sister was saying, that Tom is just at a spot in his franchise that he feels he needs to play for himself the whole way through.
yeah. And I will say his last name, Sandoval, we talked about baseball earlier, makes me think of a former mostly San Francisco Giant, but
Yep.
had a brief, not very good stint with your Boston Red Sox,
Yep.
Pablo Sandoval, the Kung Fu Panda. So
That's right.
shout out to him. I remember he was a Red Sox very briefly and it not going well, but good player for the Giants at least.
Yeah. Very good player for the Giants. Nothing's been going well for the Red Sox for the past number of years.
Well, you had Mookie for a little while.
Yeah.
Then you traded him to what is now the evil empire of MLB after
Yeah.
but I don't need to get on my Dodgers rant right now.
Nope.
Back to the mission. I love Bob Harper in this challenge. I was
Yes.
not a fan. I was upset with him last week for coming at my guy Tony because I wanted to see more Tony chaos and entertainment in the castle.
You
But
wanted to
Bob is
see
super
a
inspiring in this
you
mission.
wanted to see a spy suit of armor.
Well, I knew that wasn't going to happen. I just wanted to. Tony's entertaining no matter what he's doing.
Is he ever?
So I just wanted to have him around. But Bob H is super inspiring in this challenge, talking about how he used to think of himself as invincible, could do anything physically, being a physical trainer, but that he heart attack or strokes, one of those two a few years ago,
Yeah.
and just can't do it anymore. We see him having to stop a few times going up this hill carrying the statue pieces, but he powers through it. Super cool, really inspiring. Gets his head on one of the statues, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
So that's awesome. And right here,
And
towards
I
the
mean,
end
at
of the
this
challenge,
point,
towards
looking it up quickly, Bob is about to turn 60 years old in a few weeks. So
wow,
he's certainly
what?
a lot older than most of the people on this show.
That's crazy that he's that old. My dad's that old, and Bob Harper looks younger than my dad does. That will either make my mom laugh or facepalm if she ever catches up to the traitors and hears this episode.
I'm sure she will.
But there's someone else I recently found out was like 59 or 60 and was shocked by it. I'm gonna look it up in my text. But towards the end of end of the mission, they're trying to figure out who should get their heads on the statues and who needs it. And this is
And we have all these dominant player men just dropping their heads there one after the next, just like we saw in challenge in the first mission.
yeah. And so oh, it was a broadcaster for the Cardinals that's 59.
Mm.
And this here, as they're trying to figure out who. Stop texting. Sorry, my texts are tied to my computer. That's the dinging you guys are hearing. But
Okay.
Bob the Drag Queen, this is where things start to go sideways for
Yeah,
him.
this is where Bob the Drag Queen destroys his own game.
And I don't even really think he meant to do the way this was interpreted. But what he says, they're trying to figure out who should get heads on their statues. And Bob says that he thought one of the new guys should get a head on the statue because and get that shield because people think one of them could be a traitor. And Rob seems not happy about that because that could put a target on him. And before they showed us anything else, I wrote down, could Rob pull a move like Suri did with Christian and Cody and take out a fellow traitor?
Yeah.
And then I finished writing that, and the next scene is Rob pitching to Wes that the new people stick together and take out Bob. So I called that one, but that one was pretty easy to call. So I'm not taking too much credit for that. But Rob is basically tells us in a confessional he wants to banish Bob the Drag Queen at roundtable, but he can't fight him publicly because that would risk losing Carolyn and Danielle. So he has to do it through other people. And I thought this was really interesting.
Yeah, that was. Um, but in true Boston Rob style, if he can't, he's going to do it another way anyway. But we do see Rob try to get the votes as best as he can, and clearly, at least, while Rob was not as successful as he wanted to be, he was able to plant seeds in enough faithfuls' minds that he ended up getting the result, even if it was a little harder.
Yeah.
And if I agree with you, I don't know if it's what he necessarily intended to do, but if they just finish the mission and go back to the castle and Bob doesn't need to make a comment, directly targeted at Boston Rob, then that's not happening.
Yeah. And
You do
so,
not, as I've mentioned with some other players before, Matt Elrod, Danny Boatwright, you don't just go making a target out of Boston Rob unless you know that everybody is on side.
and then he didn't even single Rob out like the people you mentioned from Survivor do. He says one of these three people thought could be it. Like it was still dumb, but I don't think it was intended the way Rob took it. Nonetheless, that does pose a threat, whether it was intended or not, to Rob's game.
Yeah.
You mentioned Rob going around the house, trying to get numbers, struggling, approaches Danielle and Carolyn, proposing that numbers are against Bob anyway. Let's just ride with it. And Danielle opposes it because Bob is her ride or die, and she thinks she's there to play with her friend rather than be a good traitor. But Carolyn doesn't. After that meeting is over, Carolyn doesn't seem to know what to do. She kind of sticks back talking to Rob a little bit, I think, but says in a confessional that she doesn't like the sound of it.
Yeah.
And so going into the roundtable, before we start
Which
that,
we can expect from Carolyn because, unlike, say, Rob, Carolyn is probably more or less going to be that player who's just intentionally non confrontational as a trader.
yeah. So do you have any
Which
other
she
notes
has to
for
be.
roundtable?
Nope, I'm good. And this is
So,
where it all gets crazy.
and I thought Wes was going to be the aggressive one of the roundtable because, like, we hear a confessional from him as we're walking in and as we're sitting down saying that he's ready to take a shot at Nikki and says, if you're going to take a shot, you better make it stick. And he talks first at roundtable and he takes his shot. And people
Yeah.
debate about Nikki for a little bit. Dylan brings up Bob the drag queen once and doesn't get anywhere. And this is where Rob's whole thing of I can't go after like fight with him publicly because I might lose the other two. I'm
Yep.
guessing that just went out the window. Like,
I think Rob had no other choice because at this point, Rob's already been name dropping Bob around this castle. And if this goes on another day or two, that's eventually going to get back to Bob. And then
you know,
Rob is the target at the next roundtable, even if he could have kept it under wraps here.
can you imagine if the round table had gone the way it still did, but
Yeah.
he had gone home?
Whoa.
Imagine the turret. I want to see that.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
all three of us said last week that Bob was wanting to call the shots in the traitors turret and wanting to be the big man in charge, and that you can't, and wanting to push the other traitors around in a way that Rob just doesn't. And we all said a power struggle would come, and it happened at this roundtable. I don't think any of us thought it would happen this soon, though.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But
But Rob, roundtable. Rob goes into this whole monologue of who is it that every time there's a murder or a banishment, they have a deflection ready? Who is it that everyone loves, no one suspects? Like all these things that are true and that are fishy. And then he just very dramatically pauses and turns his head and goes, Bob, the drag queen. And Bob's face was incredible. But the two of them start arguing and like
yeah,
fighting back and forth very heavily. And like Bob, I don't know if it actually is this way because like sometimes I sound upset when I'm not. But in this and with Dylan, the more Bob defends himself, it sounds like he's getting more heated and angry almost. Just his voice. But they go back and forth. Bob at one point says the phrase, I will bury you under the sand. Says, I'm standing 10 toes down. I am a faithful. And Rob doesn't back down either. One of my favorite lines is like, I forget the whole sentence, but Bob says, I'm going to say this many words. He says this sentence and it ends with, I am a faithful. Rob responds with, I have two words. You're not.
That was great.
It's the blend of arrogant and funny that he's one of few that pull it off as what that well.
Yeah.
But also, I need to take a second because Zac Efron, who I grew up watching in High School Musical movies and in The Greatest Showman when I was in high school. After I graduated, I don't remember. Greatest Showman came out in the teens somewhere.
Yeah.
Zac Efron caught an absolute stray for no reason.
Yeah, no reason at
Because
all. And
what happened was Dylan is saying, like, if I were a traitor, I'd be playing a very sneaky, under the radar game because that's who I am. Bob is playing a very, I forget the word he used, but out there, like, he's a good actor. I grew up with an actor, and Bob just goes, not a good one. Which is, first off, absolutely not true. Zac Efron is awesome. Don't come for my homeboy like that. But, like, why? What?
yeah, one, totally not true. Two, at this point, I mean, we need to get Zac Efron in the castle on season 4 or 5.
I'm like, what are you? I feel like Dylan is there because they probably approached Zach and couldn't get him, to be honest.
Possibly.
But I'm like, why? At that point, I'm like, okay, he has to go. He's coming at Rob. He's coming at Zac Efron. And at this point, I really feel for Carolyn, though. And this is where I wrote down that every kill and banish seems to be weighing on her.
Yeah.
Because you can tell that she was like real. And again, maybe it's acting, but like this one and Jeremy.
This one,
were
she
both in the
seems
confessional
surprised.
too. It's not just how she's reacting with the other people, but this one really was hard on her. It seemed like.
Yeah. And I think more so than hard on her that a traitor is gone from the game, she does not know quite how she's going to manage it when they get upstairs and Rob and Danielle are now ready to go at it.
Well, and I think, and again, I don't put much stock into those previews for the next week because they can
No.
chop or edit those. But the vibe seems to be that maybe Danielle and Carolyn are wary of Rob and waiting to strike him at a certain point.
It's possible.
But again, Carolyn's so up and down. She could be like, yeah, let's get Rob in a conversation with Danielle that they play the audio of
Yeah.
and the trailer for next week. And then that be one conversation. And Carolyn.
And then we know how attached
Look,
Carolyn is to the survivor world, too.
Yeah. So she's just too up and down for me to believe any of these trailers that I don't really put much stock into anyway.
Yeah.
But it's not Carolyn and Danielle going after Rob that I'm worried about. It's my second favorite person on this cast that I've seen on my screen for a ton of time. My other favorite redheaded person besides myself seems to have completely clocked what Rob is doing.
Yeah.
Because Wes was telling Tom and someone else, like, this guy, like, Rob knew it 100%. How do you know that? And Tom, again, he's just kind of not with anything, it seems. It's like, oh, well, you don't. And Wes is like, no, you do. You know if you're also a traitor.
Now, I said this to a few people this week, and I'll say it here. I don't know how they're going to deal with the exit of Bob, but if they have the opportunity to have a new traitor, they need to get Wes in that turret ASAP and then murder Tom.
Yeah, but Rob doesn't know Wes is on him. I don't know if
I know that.
They recruit. I don't know who it would be, but
that's what I'm saying. Rob doesn't know Wes is onto him, but Rob and Wes clearly were in that birdcage along with Derek, had something that they were working together.
Yeah.
So it's certainly a target that they could use. Rob knows that Wes is an excellent gamer.
And I was texting with Kevin a little bit before one of us murdered him, whichever one of us is the show's traitor this year. And he seemed really concerned about this, that Rob is done almost in the next episode or two because Wes is onto him. And I don't know that I think it's
I
concerning,
don't
but
I don't
Rob
agree
seems
with
to.
that at all, but here's my reason behind why I don't agree with it. If it was the case and Wes was on to Rob that much, they would have put it in next week's episode, not in the last 25 seconds of this week's
Well,
episode that most people who don't aren't like us and don't podcast on this show and don't pay so much attention to little details are going to forget next week.
how do you know they're not going to put it in next week? Also, though,
They might.
they've done that before. My thing is, and I think Wes is concerning, and maybe I'm misrepresenting Kevin. He's definitely concerned about the Wes thing. I don't know if he said next episode or two. So if he has a shield, if he doesn't stay murdered from the Black Death, he can come on and correct me if I'm misrepresenting him. My thing is, Rob seems to have gained the trust of the other faithfuls when they were leaving Roundtable.
Yeah.
So Wes can say it and say he thinks it. I don't think it's going to gain traction.
Especially with Wes having a very similar reputation to Rob in the reality TV community
Yeah,
as someone who is an excellent player. If Wes goes around and starts throwing out names, especially big names, they could just as easily say, I think you're a traitor, Wes.
yeah. I'm yeah, I'm happy to see Bob the Dry Queen get banished because I kind of didn't like the way he was in the Traitors turret. I don't like the way he was wanting to strong arm people or push people around and call the shots. But I don't know how good of a move this was for Rob. I think at least one, maybe two of his other traitors seem to be want him gone now. Wes may or may not be able to get him banished. We'll see. I think the West thing is going to be a huge plot line next week.
Yeah, I do too. We'll
But
see how that goes. I'm not going to say I think it was a bad move for Rob, though, because I think if Rob didn't strike, Bob would have tried to strike first.
I'm not going to say it was a bad move. I just want to see what the result of it is. It feels like it was an amazing gameplay move. The fact that he pulled that off and somehow pulled off a blind side in a game with public votes.
Yeah.
But what I wrote down was brilliant play. Rob gonna rob. This is just what he does.
Yep.
Other than Deal or No Deal Island, where you don't vote people out, you just if you beat the banker, you choose someone. But like amazing gameplay, incredible strategy and move that he was able to pull that off. That part's impressive. I'm just worried of what the result is going to be for him.
True.
I hope, and I think he could be fine. I think he could still be around a while.
Yeah, I do.
But if Wes approaches Danielle about this thing, Danielle's absolutely going to jump on that train.
Yep.
So, and again, who knows? I can't predict Carolyn, so I'm not going to try. This was a fun episode, though. Incredible move by Rob.
I want to do something before we wrap up.
Yes.
And I know we've done this on Tribal Council chat. I'm thinking how we can adapt it to here. TT and I do this. Before we go, let's get each other's player of the week and, as TT and I do, last place of the week, but they'll put a twist into it for the traitors. It can't be a player who's murdered or banished.
Darn it, I was going to say Bob. You found my loophole
Well, I mean,
before I even
in
used
this
it.
show, it's pretty obvious that if you get banished, you're the worst player that week.
Is it
So
not
I
the
thought I
same
would
thing
put.
with the challenge, though? Just pick the person that went home in the elimination round.
We don't often do that, though.
That's wild. That'd be what I would do. I feel like, well, this person went home, so they're
TT and I look a lot at actual game and who's making mistakes along the way throughout the episode, as opposed to just who the majority felt like throwing into elimination week after week after week.
fair enough. And so, my player of the week, it's going to be Rob, even though I'm nervous about what the results could be.
That's
I'm not
fine
convinced
because
it could be good or bad. We'll have to see what happens.
yeah, that's totally fine because that's what we do. We're just focused on the episode we saw, not necessarily power rankings in terms of who's in the best spot in the game because
Yeah.
we want it to change from one week to the next.
Also, the
So
doggy.
yeah, so yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I would say Rob here, he certainly made the biggest move. Certainly got a lot of attention. Will it work out? Who knows? But hey, if it wasn't for Rob, though, once again having another week where there's still four traitors in the turret, and now there's three. We'll see what happens as to whether Alan tells them to add a fourth or not.
I
And I'm
don't
only
think
not
they'll.
sure on that.
I don't think they'll recruit again unless it goes down to two.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I don't think so either, just because they've never had four before, but who knows?
Yeah. So
And who's your worst player of the week? However, this cannot be either Jeremy or Bob because they are no longer in the game.
I was gonna
Should
say.
I should I go while you think about it?
Yes.
Do you want me to go?
Yeah.
I'm gonna pick Nikki here. And I
Interesting.
don't think it's Nikki's fault at all. I think she's just through this episode got accused of something that she did not do, which is trying to use the murder in front of everybody as a way to advance her game as a traitor, which she's not a traitor. She was put there by four other people that she could not control. But I think that puts Nikki's move down the furthest in the game, at least in my mind, compared to where she was coming into the episode.
Yeah. I, for the sake of just not having the same thing, because I agree, Nikki's name is out there strong, and that's hard to shake. I'm gonna say Tom because like their
Yeah,
plan was before the Bob thing happened was banish Nikki now and kill Tom next, I believe. And Tom just
makes
kind of
sense.
doesn't seem to know what's happening anytime he's on the screen. So I think he could get trouble.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right. Well, this was fun.
Yes, and also,
Looking forward.
are you the traitor of our show?
No, no, I'm not.
Or so he
Come
said.
on, guys. If you're watching on YouTube, do I look like the traitor or does Bruce look like the traitor?
I, I just took the giant hood off without my hands. So we'll see. And I'm going to say I'm not the traitor either, just so one of us is. We'll see. But have a great week. Tune in. Join us again next week at the roundtable. And until then, don't get murdered.